The animal cargo of the day was large and honking, but it seemed well-mannered enough. Picture a sea lion with tiny scales instead of fur, dark gray on top and speckled pale underneath, bobbing its head in curiosity at the cargo bay and the people in it. The squid-shaped clients maneuvering the cage into place didn't rate a second look, but they were probably familiar and boring. Captain Sunlight, with her lemon-yellow scales and dignified lizard-person demeanor, got a lot of attention. She ignored the honks as she finished business with the clients. Then I stepped up to see what kind of creature I'd be in charge of for this trip, and it exploded in excitement like a 500-pound puppy, dancing in place on its flippers and honking up a storm. One of the clients said, "It does that sometimes. Have a good flight," then waved a tentacle and left. Captain Sunlight squinted at the cage like she would have liked to cover her ear holes, but wanted to put on a strong front. Instead, she looked up at me and said, "Good thing this is a short journey. It seems to like you, though." "I see that," I said, waggling my fingers at it, which just made it honk louder. "Did they tell us a name for it?" She consulted the information on her tablet while the excitable creature continued to hop around. "Looks like his name is Freckles." "That's adorable," I said. "Hi, Freckles. Are you a good boy? Yes? Are you so excited that you could break a weaker travel cage than this? Yes, you are." I pressed my hands to my knees in classic talking-to-puppy fashion, which did nothing for the noise levels in the room. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted," Captain Sunlight told me. "The hover setting for the cage is turned off. It's clamped in place. The food and supplies are here. We'll take off shortly." "Got it," I said with a wave as she left. There was a chance that Freckles would calm down if I left too, but he seemed equally likely to make lonely wails if left alone. And anyways, this was the reason I'd been hired in the first place. Nobody else on the courier ship knew the first thing about animals. "All right, Freckles, are you ready to travel through space? Is that new for you? You look like you're in good shape. Let's aim for no medical emergencies on this trip." Freckles honked once, which I took for a yes. He bobbed up and down like a dog inviting another to play. I copied the move, and he did it again. I lifted one foot, and he did the same, honking happily. "Good boy. I'll bet you make your people proud by holding still for toothbrushing, don't you? Let me see your teeth." "Ah." I opened my mouth as an example. With a similar noise, the clever animal copied the motion. His teeth looked clean enough, with none discolored or missing, and he even stuck his tongue out for a good look when prompted. I found a nearly empty container of treats among the supplies, and rewarded him for good behavior. "Good job. What else should we check? Can you show me your flipper? And turn like this." "Very good. And like that?" He could and did, visibly happy with the praise and treats. He was a little calmer now that there was something specific to do. The engine started up with a quiet rumble, which caused him a moment of anxiety, but he was happily distracted when I started echoing his honks back at him. If this had been an inanimate cargo, I would have left the cargo bay already, but I had nothing more important to do. My job today was to keep an eye on this guy, so I prompted him to do more beneficial tricks. Then, when the treats ran out, I decided the container made a fine toy. "Hey, look, a hat," I told him as I put the lid on my head. The container was a mostly round thing that twisted apart into two equal halves. That meant Freckles got a hat too, and he was so happy about it when I stuck it between the bars. Only one coworker walked past the door while I was entertaining the cargo, Murr the strong-arm, who looked much like the people who'd brought Freckles on board. Murr paused, saying nothing. Freckles ignored him, dancing from side to side while wearing his jaunty new hat. I held my own pose, one foot in the air, arms spread. "Yes?" "Nothing," Murr said. "Nothing at all." He continued on his way. "You're welcome to join us," I called after him. "No thanks, I'm good." The short trip was pretty fun. Freckles was particularly taken by the discovery that his honks echoed when the container covered his snout. He could even balance it on his flipper like a hand, taking it on and off to test the difference in sounds. When I did the same and then gave him another treat from a fresh container, he pranced in place and slapped his flippers together. As it turned out, he was good at repeating patterns too. We did some clapping games of the sort that human toddlers love. Then I found a ball among the supplies, and we were all set for the rest of the trip. It was even the squishy kind that glorped between the bars instead of bouncing off, which was perfect. We played an entertaining game of catch until the engine noises changed into landing sounds. I was honestly surprised the trip was over. The captain came back in to meet the clients who were here for pickup, and I made sure to pack away everything into the supplies. Freckles made a sad honk when I took the container back, but I gave him one last treat, and that made up for it. These two clients looked much like the last, though one was carrying a bag from the shopping trip they'd done on the way here. They were also more talkative than the other ones. Had to stop by the battery shop for 3 different kinds of chargers, then the feed store for more of the special diet that our oldest animal takes, and there was so much traffic. The one typing information into the payment screen didn't stop for breath, waving several tentacles as she talked. "I'm just glad there was a mask attachment of the right size in stock," said the one with the bag. "Getting Freckles his air vitamins is going to be hard enough as it is." He pulled something from the bag, a long tube with a concave shape at one end. "What do you think, Freckles? Can this be easy for once?" Freckles honked, which could have meant anything. I looked at the mask. "What does he usually do when you have to give him air vitamins?" The strong arm sighed like a deflating balloon. "He just doesn't want it anywhere near his face. He seems to think it's a game to avoid it, which is fun for him, but incredibly tiresome for everyone else." "Have you tried making it a different game?" I asked, starting to smile. "Like what? Can I see that for a moment?" When he passed it over, I got the container of treats and rattled it for Freckles' attention, then took a position in front of the cage. I held the mask in front of my own face. "Hey, Freckles, honk honk." He of course honked happily and shoved his nose through the bars, eager for his turn. I settled it against his snout, perfect fit, and he honked away. I pulled the mask back and gave him a treat, then turned to beam at the clients. "What? He's never done that," said the one. "How did you train him to do that?" demanded the other. "Honestly, I wasn't trying to," I admitted, "but he's very smart. He seems to like copying motions, and he's definitely food motivated." "Oh yes, those are the good treats," said the client with the bag. "The new kind that my cousin's book club host recommended." I handed back the mask. "Then you might keep these in reserve for important things, like rewarding him for taking his air vitamins. Though given how much he's enjoying the new game, you might not even need to." The clients were overjoyed. They thanked me, thanked Captain Sunlight, and showered Freckles with praise as they unclamped the cage and started up its hover function. We helped them down the ramp, then they waved off any further assistance on the way to a flatbed skimmer with a loading arm. The guy with the bag of shopping struggled just a bit managing all the supplies, too. But neither Captain Sunlight nor I were about to insult a strong arm by suggesting they needed help carrying something. So we just waved our goodbyes and made sure they got everything loaded onto the skimmer before we closed the cargo bay door. "Bye, Freckles," I called as it closed. I heard one last honk, which I decided sounded excited about the skimmer ride to come. "Well," said Captain Sunlight, "that was fortunate. Good job." "Thanks," I said. "I think they'll all enjoy the vitamin process more now, especially Freckles." We walked through the empty cargo bay to the hall, where Paint met us, with confusion on her scaly orange face and a jar lid in her hands. "Mur said to give this to you," she said, holding it out to me. I laughed. "Mur thinks he's very funny." I dutifully set it on my head. "Yes, the height of fashion, but I think it would look better on him. You can tell him I said so." "Okay," Paint said, taking the lid back. "Why?" Captain Sunlight huffed a laugh and headed off to the cockpit, while I began the explanation of how I'd spent the recent flight.